Open the stupid gate. It's for the whole neighborhood. That's what she screamed at me like my family's cabin was just some public park waiting for her to march right in with the HOA banner and 100 folding chairs. And let me tell you, I was standing there still smelling like burnt coffee newsletter in my hand, wondering if I'd somehow missed the memo that my quiet little lakeside getaway had become the official retreat for everyone on the block except me. You ever had that moment where your whole world gets hijacked in 3 sentences flat? Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec. The whole mess started on a Thursday morning, one of those hazy, too early hours where you're still in your boots and not sure which way's up. I went out to grab the mail and found this newsletter crammed in so hard it looked like the mailman was mad at me. Front page community retreat at the lakeside cabin. My cabin. The one I spent 3 years of weekends dragging back from the dead board by board, making it something my granddad would have been proud of. What really made my jaw drop was the QR code on the bottom. Rideshare coordination, RSVP links, even a map for parking like they'd planned out a mini Woodstock on my dock, and all I had to do was smile and wave. My hands were shaking. Not sure if I was about to laugh, cry, or throw something, because here's the real kicker. If something happened at this event, some kid fell, someone slipped on the dock, my insurance might not cover a dime. I could lose the whole place. You know what I mean? You ever felt that cold knot in your stomach, the one that says, buddy, this is about to get expensive? So I did the only thing that made sense. I locked the gate. Not just any lock either. I ran down to the hardware store and got tamper-proof security wire with a serial number, the kind you can't cut without leaving evidence. Let somebody try. I wanted the sheriff to have a nice, easy day explaining private property to folks who thought community meant free-for-all. But that wasn't enough. I needed to know who'd volunteered my slice of heaven for the masses, so I dug out my fire safe and spread every deed survey map and insurance paper across the kitchen table like I was prepping for battle. Cedar beams, old black and white photos, every memory locked inside those walls, all about to become collateral damage if I didn't play this smart. If the HOA wanted to play legal games, I'd make them sign their names on the dotted line. So next morning, I set up shop right outside my gate, folding table, thick manila folder, and a big fat event host authorization and personal liability commitment form clipped on top. Anyone who wanted in could sign for insurance permits and injuries, no signature, no entry. I even printed out state laws about unauthorized use of private property. Nothing threatening, just good old information. If they were so confident this was a community event, surely they'd put their money where their mouth was. The best part: the look on my neighbors' faces when they strolled by and saw my pop-up legal defense stand. Mrs. Henderson, who's lived across the street since the Nixon years, spent 10 minutes tracing the survey map with her finger. Mr. June snapped a picture of my form. You could almost see the gears turning. Wait, are we really allowed to do this? I started thinking about my granddad, how he built the original cabin with his own 2 hands, probably would have handled this mess with the same stubborn streak I got from him. And that LLC I set up last year to own the access road, thought it was overkill. Turns out it might just be my saving grace. Now about that QR code, the one they printed everywhere, it went nowhere. Just a white screen spinning its wheels. I laughed, but not because it was funny. More like, wow, y'all really thought this through, didn't you? The more I dug, the more amateur hour it all seemed. The HOA website had no mention of events. I called the newsletter company. The QR code wasn't even hooked up to anything. You can't make this stuff up. But that's when things got real. 100 people on my land, no permits, no insurance. If someone got hurt, it was on me. I remembered reading about a homeowner sued for 40 grand after someone broke an ankle at an unauthorized party. Their insurance company flat out denied the claim. That's not a risk I'm taking. So I doubled down. By the end of the day, my little table at the gate had turned into a community event of its own, neighbors gawking, snapping pics, whispering about what the HOA's up to now. The next twist, Mrs. Henderson herself showed up at my door with the newsletter, her phone, and the kind of look that says, Evan, we're in for a ride. Turns out her daughter's a real estate lawyer and had already flagged this as classic HOA overreach. Mrs. Henderson handed me a text from her daughter, document everything. The newsletter, the QR code, any HOA communication. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my cabin. It was about protecting myself, my finances, and honestly, my peace of mind from folks who couldn't tell the difference between community and private. Now, I'm not the only one on the receiving end of Cynthia Pierce's power trip. Yeah, she's the HOA president and apparently has a history. Mr. June let me in on his stash of emails, 2 years of unilateral decisions. Everything from banning political signs to charging folks for home improvements that didn't need approval. The Williams family had to lawyer up after she tried fining them for parking their own boat in their driveway. The Johnsons came home to find their flower beds ripped up by a landscaping crew because Cynthia said it was community beautification, even though it was their property. By Friday, I had a stack of witness statements and a pattern that would make any judge raise an eyebrow. And just when I thought it couldn't get wilder, Saturday morning rolls around with a white van at my gate. Morgan's locksmith. They were going to cut the lock. I get out there with my deed in hand, ready to show them exactly who owns what. The locksmith guy looked like he'd seen it all. Asked, "You the property owner?" I showed him the papers. He reads them. Then looks at Grant Morgan, Cynthia's right-hand man, always playing the tough guy, and says, "Sorry, can't do it. My license doesn't cover unauthorized entry on private property." Grant starts puffing up about board authority, but the locksmith just hands over his card and leaves. Now that's what I call professional ethics. That incident made it crystal clear liability is king. I called my insurance agent, Sarah, and she laid it out in cold, hard numbers. Unauthorized events, not covered. Vendor contracts. If they deliver and don't get paid, they can come after me too. There was even a case in another county, $60,000 in damages after an unauthorized event went bad. The property owner had to pay out of pocket. And then bam, Rebecca Shaw, the neighbor who does freelance accounting, calls me up. She's accidentally been copied on emails from vendors, real invoices, real contracts, all tied to my address. Portable toilets, catering, van rentals, the works. Over $1,500 in vendor services already scheduled for delivery. All of it tied to my land, none of it authorized by me. It hit me, this isn't just a neighborhood squabble. This is financial exposure on a scale that could wipe out my savings, my home, everything. So I added every vendor, every cost, every payment status to my documentation. Called the vendors myself, told them I hadn't ordered anything, and to contact whoever did. One by one, they started calling Cynthia directly. You could almost hear the panic spreading. The day of the event was like a scene from a bad sitcom. Families showing up in cars, kids with coolers and floaties, everyone confused by the locked gate. I stood there, folder in hand, calmly explaining to each driver that whoever authorized the event needed to sign for $1,500 in vendor services and potentially 6 figures in liability. Cynthia finally arrived in her black sedan, tried to bluff her way through, but when she saw the numbers, her face went pale. "I don't have authority to accept this level of financial risk," she finally admitted. You think, by now, the vendors were in open revolt, threatening collections, demanding payment, some even considering legal action. I did some courthouse research, found 3 cases where HOA presidents got personally sued and lost big for unauthorized events on private property. Not only did they have to pay vendor bills, but also damages and legal fees, one for over $40,000. So mediation day. Everyone at Mrs. Henderson's kitchen table, her daughter walking us through the law. I dropped my trump card, the LLC that owns the access road, the easement documentation, and the clause that bans any events over 20 people without written permission. Cynthia's face went white as a sheet. She finally got it. Good intentions don't matter when the bill comes due. The settlement, Cynthia agreed to pay off the vendors, write a formal apology, and help draft new guidelines for property rights and HOA authority. Real educational materials. Checklists, the works. 6 months later, those guidelines got picked up by 3 other neighborhoods. My property got new signage, clear boundaries, and the respect it deserved. So here's the question. How much is your peace of mind worth? What would you do if someone tried to gift your land to the whole neighborhood and leave you holding the bill? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your HOA war stories, or just let me know where you stand on property rights versus community power. And if you got something out of this saga, hit that thanks button, like, share, and stick around, because trust me, there's always another wild story coming down the road.